Tonight, imagine standing alone in a medieval hamlet, the mud freezing around your ankles, dragging the heat from your boots into the earth. Not during the day, when the noise of the market might distract you, but long before dawn, in the deepest part of the winter night. The air is not just cold. It is heavy, pressing against your chest with a damp, suffocating weight that tastes of wood smoke and stagnant water. The silence here is not peaceful. It is the silence of a held breath, a tense, watchful quiet where the only sound is the cracking of frost on the thatch and the distant, hungry bark of a dog. The darkness is absolute. It is not the gray, ambient gloom of a modern city night. It is a thick, physical blindfold that erases the world a foot in front of your face. You feel small, vulnerable, and dangerously exposed. You probably wouldn't last long here. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead and comment your location and your local time. Let's mark this quiet vigil together across the dark. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Most people imagine medieval nights as a time of rest, a simple pause between days of labor. But for you, a peasant living in the 14th century, night is not a pause. It is a wall. It is a massive, impenetrable barrier that drops from the sky the moment the sun dips below the horizon. You do not have the luxury of flipping a switch to push back the shadows. When the light goes, your world shrinks from the miles of the open fields to the few feet surrounding your hearth. You stand in the doorway of your small timber-framed cottage, watching the last bruising of purple fade from the western sky. This is the moment of shutting in. It is not a casual decision to go inside. It is a survival instinct. Outside, the world belongs to the cold, to the wolves, and to the spirits that the priest warns you about on Sundays. Inside, there is at least the illusion of safety. You pull the heavy oak door shut and drop the bar. The thud is final. You are now sealed in a box until the sun decides to return. The darkness inside the cottage is startling. Your eyes strain to find familiar shapes, the rough table, the bench, the sleeping ledge, but there is nothing but void. You navigate by memory and by shin bruises, shuffling across the packed earth floor with your hands outstretched like a sleepwalker. You are a prisoner in your own home, trapped by the simple lack of photons. You might think about lighting a candle. In your mind, the medieval world is lit by the warm, romantic glow of beeswax tapers. But you are not a lord, and you certainly aren't a bishop. Beeswax is for the church, burning high on the altar to save souls. For you, wax is a currency, not a tool. It costs a day's wages for a decent candle, which means burning one is literally burning money. You don't have that kind of disposable income. Instead, if you are desperate, you might light a rushlight. You fumble in the dark for the iron holder and strike a spark with flint and steel, a process that is frustratingly slow and prone to failure. When the spark finally catches the tinder, you light a strip of dried pith that has been dipped in rendered animal fat. It doesn't flare, it sputters. It emits a weak, smoky, yellow glow that barely reaches the corners of the room. It smells like burning bacon that has gone off. This is your technology. It is a pathetic attempt to fight the night, offering just enough light to see how dirty your floor is, but not enough to actually do anything useful. So you don't. You let the rushlight die. You accept the dark. This is the defining reality of your existence. Your life is dictated by the sun. When the sun is up, you work until your muscles fail. When the sun is down, you stop. There is no evening, as modern people know it. There is no time to read, even if you could read, no time to mend tools, no time to socialize. The darkness forces a halt to all productivity. It is nature's way of saying your shift is over, whether you are finished or not. You sit on the edge of the sleeping platform, listening to the house settle. The walls are thin wattle and daub, a mixture of mud, straw, and manure. They keep the wind out, mostly, but they do not keep the cold out. You can feel the temperature dropping, the dampness rising from the floor to wrap around your ankles. You start to untie your boots, your fingers stiff and clumsy. You do not undress fully. To strip naked in this cold would be madness, and besides, privacy is a concept you have never experienced. You sleep in your linen shift, the same one you wore in the fields, adding layers of wool if you have them. Historians still argue whether the medieval peasant resented this enforced downtime or embraced it. Standing here, shivering in the pitch black, you suspect the resentment is stronger. There is a boredom to the dark. You are awake, your mind is active, but your body is useless. You are suspended in a void. You chew on a piece of hard bread left over from supper, eating in the dark, tasting the grit of the stone mill in every bite. It's a sensory deprivation tank, but with more drafts. The psychological weight of this darkness cannot be overstated. Today, we complain about light pollution, about the inability to see the stars. You would give anything for a little light pollution. For you, the night is a time of vulnerability. You are blind to the threats that might be lurking outside or inside. Every creak of the timber sounds like a footstep. Every rustle in the thatch sounds like an intruder. Your imagination, deprived of visual input, begins to fill the void with monsters. You slide back onto the straw mattress. It rustles loudly, a dry, scratching sound that seems deafening in the quiet. You are not going to sleep for 8 solid hours. That is a modern invention, a product of factory whistles and electric bulbs. You are about to enter the first sleep, the premier sang. It is a biological necessity, a collapse into unconsciousness brought on by pure physical exhaustion. You lie there, staring up at where you know the roof is, though you cannot see it. You count the hours in your head, though you have no clock. The church bell might ring in the distance, marking the canonical hours, but the wind often carries the sound away. You are untethered from time. You are simply existing in the dark, waiting for your body to shut down. There is a strange, quiet tragedy to this nightly imprisonment. You are a creature of the light, forced to spend nearly half your life in a coma-like state, simply because you cannot see. You wrap the rough wool blanket tighter around your shoulders. The smell of the wool-wet sheep and old smoke is comforting. It is the smell of survival. You close your eyes, though it makes no difference to what you see. The darkness behind your eyelids is exactly the same shade of black as the darkness in the room. You take a breath, the cold air stinging your nostrils, and let go. The heavy curtain of the true night is fallen, and there is no lifting it until the sun decides to save you. You lie back, pulling the scratchy wool blanket up to your chin, but the darkness is not empty. As your eyes adjust to the gloom, or rather, as your other senses take over where your sight has failed, you become acutely aware that you are not alone. In the modern world, the bedroom is a sanctuary of solitude, a private shrine to the individual. Here, in your timber-framed box, sleep is a team sport, and the roster includes livestock. You are breathing the same air as the ox. This is not a metaphor. Your cottage is likely a longhouse or a single-room dwelling divided only by a shallow gutter in the dirt floor. On one side, the human side, lies the straw mattress where your entire family is currently arranging themselves like a darker, smellier game of Tetris. On the other side, the animal side, stands your most valuable possession, the plow ox, and perhaps a milk cow if the harvest was good. There is no wall between you. There is no door to close against the barnyard. You are sleeping inside the barn, and the barn is sleeping inside your house. The smell is the first thing that hits you, though hits implies a sudden impact. In reality, it is a constant, suffocating embrace. It is a thick, humid cocktail of manure, wet straw, unwashed human bodies, and the sweet, grassy fermentation of animal breath. You don't notice it after the first hour. Your brain simply categorizes it as atmosphere. but if a time traveler were to step into your home right now, they would likely vomit. To you, this stench is the scent of survival. The ammonia rising from the animal urine is sharp enough to clear your sinuses, which is helpful given the constant respiratory infections that plague the village. You shift your legs, trying to find a comfortable spot in the straw, but your foot connects with something warm and hairy. It's the dog, or maybe a goat that has wandered over from the byre end of the house. You don't kick it away. You pull it closer. In the depths of January, a goat is not a nuisance. It is a furry, four-legged hot water bottle. The heat radiating from the animals is the only thing standing between you and hypothermia. The ox, chewing his cud with a rhythmic, wet clomp-clomp sound in the dark, is a massive living radiator. He generates more BTUs than your meager hearth ever could. You cherish him. You probably treat him better than you treat your children, largely because the ox is harder to replace. Privacy, in this environment, is a concept as foreign as space travel. You are sandwiched between your wife and your youngest child, with your eldest son curled up at your feet and an elderly aunt wheezing somewhere near your head. The bed, if you can call a glorified sack of straw, a bed is a communal raft in a sea of cold mud. Every movement is a negotiation. If you turn over, 3 other people have to adjust their hips. If you cough, everyone wakes up. If you have an itch, you are likely scratching someone else's arm by mistake. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants actually craved privacy and were denied it, or if they simply didn't understand the need for it. Lying here with an elbow in your ribs and the sound of your neighbor snoring through the thin wattle wall, you suspect it's the latter. Solitude is dangerous. Solitude means you are freezing. Solitude means no one is there to watch the fire or listen for the wolves. You trade your dignity for body heat, and it is a bargain you make gladly every single night. The noises of the night are a symphony of biology. It is never truly quiet. You hear the rustle of the straw as the cow shifts its weight. You hear the wet, slap-like sound of dung hitting the earth floor, reminder of the shoveling you all have to do at first light. You hear the intestinal gurgles of 6 humans and 3 animals, digesting a diet of pottage and hay. It is a loud, wet, intimate soundscape. You know the breathing patterns of everyone in your household. You know that the short, sharp inhale means your wife is dreaming, and the long, rattling exhale means your father is still alive for now. There is a strange, claustrophobic intimacy to this arrangement. You cannot hide anything. Your arguments, your sickness, your prayers, and your marital duties all happen within arm's reach of your children and your livestock. The marital debt, as the church calls it, is paid in silence, under heavy blankets, with the utmost discretion, while the ox watches with indifferent, glassy eyes. It adds a layer of tension to the night, a need to be invisible while pressing against other bodies. You might wonder about the hygiene. You should stop wondering. It will only upset you. The floor is dirt, often covered in Russia's dried reeds that are swept out perhaps twice a year. In between sweepings, layers of food scraps, spit, animal waste, and general filth accumulate in the threshing floor of the living space. You are sleeping on a compost heap. The fleas are a constant companion. You feel one crawling behind your ear right now. You don't slap it. That takes too much energy. You just pinch it between your fingernails. A small pop in the dark that marks a tiny victory in the endless war against parasites. The proximity to the animals also brings a specific danger. Large animals are clumsy in the dark. Stories circulate in the village of children rolled over by sows or kicked by startled horses while they slept. You keep one ear open for the frantic scrabbling of hooves that signals a nightmare in the byre. You are the shepherd even while you sleep, your subconscious tuned to the frequency of the barn. And yet, there is a security here. The heat of the ox is heavy and damp, creating a microclimate under the thatch that keeps the frost at bay. The sound of its breathing is a metronome, slow and steady, anchoring you to the earth. It is a reminder that you possess something of value, something that produces warmth and work. In a world that is constantly trying to starve or freeze you, the smell of fresh manure is the smell of wealth. You pull the blanket over your head to block out the draft coming from the door. The wool is rough and scratches your nose. The air under the blanket is stale, recycled breath, but it is warm. You are part of a pile, a singular organism made of humans and beasts, huddling together against the indifference of the medieval winter. You close your eyes, listening to the cow chew, and try to ignore the fact that the person next to you hasn't washed their hair since Michaelmas. The straw mattress beneath you is lumpy, infested with vermin, and smells faintly of mold. But at this moment, it feels like the finest down feather bed in Christendom. You do not drift off to sleep. You crash. It is a violent downshifting of biological gears, a sudden cessation of consciousness that feels less like resting and more like a system failure. The transition is abrupt. One moment you are listening to the wet chewing of the ox, and the next you are gone. This is the first sleep, the premier sum. In the medieval world, sleep is not a single, unbroken 8-hour block. It is a 2-act play, and this first act is a desperate, calorie-saving coma. Your body has been pushed to its absolute limit during the 12 hours of daylight. You have lifted heavy timber, dragged a plow through stubborn clay, or threshed grain until your shoulders burned with a fire that never quite goes away. Now, the debt must be paid. Your body shuts down with a terrifying efficiency. Your heart rate drops to a crawl. Your breathing becomes shallow and rhythmic, matching the slow cadence of the animals beside you. You are essentially hibernating. This is not the REM-rich, dream-filled sleep of the modern era where the brain processes the day's anxieties. You don't have the energy for anxiety. Your brain simply turns off the lights to save the oil. It is a deep, black, dreamless void where time does not exist. The physical toll of your life is etched into how you sleep. Your hands, curled into permanent claws from gripping tools, do not relax. They remain half-closed, twitching occasionally as the nerves misfire. Your back, compressed by years of carrying burdens that would break a modern mule, settles into the straw with a dull, throbbing ache that you no longer register as pain. It is just the sensation of having a spine. You are a broken machine placed in storage for 4 hours. Historians often romanticize the natural rhythms of pre-industrial sleep, but there is nothing romantic about this. It is a survival mechanism. Your caloric intake is barely enough to keep you upright, and the cold of the cottage is a constant thief, stealing heat from your core. By dropping into this profound stupor, your body minimizes the theft. You are playing dead to trick the winter. The depth of this sleep is dangerous. A spark from the dying embers could land on the dry rushes of the floor, and the smoke might fill the room before you even twitch. A thief could lift the latch, if you had a latch worth lifting, and step over your body without you waking. You are so deeply under that you are vulnerable to the very world you are trying to escape. Mothers are warned by the parish priests not to sleep with infants in the bed, for fear of overlaying, rolling onto the child in this dead-weight slumber and suffocating them. It happens more often than anyone wants to admit. The exhaustion is a heavy, clumsy giant that does not know its own strength. You lie on your back, mouth likely open to facilitate the intake of air through your chronically congested nose. The air in the room is cooling rapidly as the fire dies down to embers. The temperature differential between the air in your lungs and the air in the room creates a small cloud of steam with every exhale. You are a steam engine idling in the dark. This dead sleep usually lasts for about 4 hours. It is the sleep of the laboring class. The nobility, with their soft beds, heavy curtains, and rich diets of spiced meats and wine, often struggle with insomnia. They toss and turn, plagued by gout and indigestion. But you? You have the luxury of total obliteration. You have earned this temporary death with every drop of sweat you lost in the field. There is a strange equality in this oblivion. In the first sleep, you are not a serf. You are not bound to the land. You owe no taxes. You are simply a biological entity repairing itself. The hierarchy of the feudal system dissolves in the blackness. The King of France is asleep right now, and he is likely dreaming of wars and debts. You are dreaming of nothing. In this specific way, you are freer than he is. But the body is a cruel master. Even in this depth, it betrays you. You might twitch violently, a hypnic jerk caused by your muscles relaxing too quickly, sending a shockwave through the bed that wakes your wife. She groans and shoves you with a sharp elbow. You don't even feel it. You simply roll over, pulling the scratchy wool blanket tighter, burying your face in the straw to escape the draft. The silence of your mind is absolute. There are no lists of tasks for tomorrow, no existential dread about the harvest. Those thoughts require energy, and you have none to spare. You are merely a vessel for the darkness. It fills your ears, your eyes, your mouth. You are drinking the night. The vermin in the bed, the fleas, the lice, the bedbugs feast on you while you lie there. You are a warm buffet in a cold world. You might scratch in your sleep, long bloody furrows down your shins, but you won't remember it in the morning. Your body accepts the parasites as a tax for warmth. It is a symbiotic relationship. You provide the blood. The straw provides the insulation. The bugs provide the company. As the hours drag on, the room gets colder. The frost begins to form on the inside of the door. The animals settle into their own rhythm. The house breathes with you. You are part of the architecture now, a structural support made of bone and weary muscle. You are the anchor that keeps the house from floating away into the cold indifference of the universe. And yet, this peace is finite. You are not allowed to stay here. The biology that put you under will soon pull you back out. The first sleep is a loan, not a gift. And like all loans in the medieval world, the interest rate is high, and the collection agent is coming. You sleep hard because you know, deep in your reptilian brain, that the wakefulness is waiting for you in the pitch black of midnight, and it will demand your attention whether you are rested or not. The awakening is not a gentle slide into consciousness. It is a violent shove. One moment you are floating in the warm amniotic void of the premier sun, and the next, your eyes snap open to a darkness so absolute it feels like you have gone blind. There is no transition, no groggy hitting of a snooze button. You are simply, suddenly, and terrifyingly awake. Your heart is hammering against your ribs, a frantic, primal rhythm that suggests you are startled by a predator. But there is no predator. There is only the silence of the cottage and the rhythmic, wet chewing of the ox a few feet away. You lie perfectly still, trying to remember who you are, where you are, and why you are awake. This is the watch, the door veil, the wake sleep. It is a biologically mandated intermission in the theater of your rest, a gap between the first sleep and the second that nature has inserted into your night for reasons you are too cold to appreciate. The first sensation, once the confusion subsides, is the cold. While you were dead to the world, the fire in the central hearth has died down to a sullen gray pile of ash. The heat it threw off 4 hours ago has evaporated, sucked out through the thatch and the cracks in the wattle. The temperature inside the cottage has plummeted to match the freezing mud outside. You can feel the frost on the blanket near your face. The air you inhale is sharp and thin. It hurts your teeth. You realize with a sinking feeling that the warmth of the animal pile is failing. You shift your legs, and the straw mattress crunches loudly. Your joints are stiff, locked into the shape of the fetal curl you adopted hours ago. You try to stretch, but a cramp seizes your Kaffa Charlie horse, born of dehydration and hard labor. You bite your tongue to keep from shouting. To wake the house now would be a crime. You massage the knot of muscle in the dark, grimacing, waiting for the fibers to release their grip. It is a private, silent agony the kind of small torture that defines your existence. This wakefulness is confusing. In the modern world, waking up at 1 a.m. is a nuisance, a sign of insomnia or stress. Here, it is simply what happens. Your body has processed the initial exhaustion. It has repaired the worst of the muscle tears. And now, it demands that you be conscious for an hour or two before it allows you to return to the void. It is a cruel joke. You are too tired to be productive, yet too awake to sleep. You are trapped in a liminal space, a purgatory between two little deaths. Your bladder, unfortunately, is the only alarm clock that cannot be ignored. The heavy pottage and ale from supper have worked their way through your system, and the pressure is insistent. This presents a terrible logistical challenge. To relieve yourself, you must leave the relative warmth of the shared bed. You must extract your limbs from the tangle of your wife and children, brave the freezing air of the room, and navigate to the bucket or the door. You choose the bucket. The door is too far, and unbarring it would let in a blast of wind that might kill your grandmother. You slide out from under the skins, and the cold hits you like a wet sheet. You are wearing only your linen shift, which offers about as much insulation as a spiderweb. You shiver violently, your teeth chattering a rhythm that sounds suspiciously like panic. You fumble in the dark, your toes curling on the packed dirt floor, searching for the chamber pot. You find it by kicking it. Thankfully, it was empty. Standing there in the pitch black, listening to the stream hit the ceramic, you feel a profound sense of absurdity. You are a grown man, a provider, a steward of the land, shivering in your underwear next to a cow, pissing into a pot while the wind howls outside. If dignity is a currency, you are currently bankrupt. You finish and stumble back toward the hearth. You have a duty to perform. You must check the fire. If the fire dies completely, you lose more than just heat. You lose the ability to cook, to see, and to keep the damp at bay. Relighting a fire with damp tinder and cold flint is a task that can take an hour of cursing. So, you are the keeper of the flame. You pick up an iron poker and gently prod the ash. A faint, orange glow reveals itself, the seed of the fire. You carefully bank it, covering the embers with fresh ash to insulate them, ensuring they will smolder until dawn. It is a delicate operation. You are putting the fire to sleep, tucking it in so it doesn't burn the house down, but also doesn't die. It's like caring for a very dangerous, very hot toddler. Satisfied, or at least resigned, you sit for a moment on the wooden bench near the hearth. The stone is cold, sucking the heat from your thighs, but you stay. This is the only time of day you are truly alone. The watch offers a strange, hollow sort of freedom. The Lord is asleep. The priest is asleep. The bailiff is asleep. For this 1 hour, no one owns you. You are the master of the dark, even if your kingdom is just a 12 by 12 hut, smelling of dung. You listen to the night. Without the visual distraction of the world, your ears become radar dishes. You hear the wind rattling the eaves. You hear a wolf howl in the distance, a sound that triggers a primal spike of adrenaline in your gut. You hear the breathing of your family, the soft, whistle-like snore of your wife, the congested wheeze of your youngest. You count the breaths. As long as they are breathing, you have succeeded. Historians still argue whether this time was used for quiet contemplation or simply endured with gritty patience. Sitting there, hugging your knees to your chest, you lean toward endurance. You are not contemplating the nature of the divine. You are wondering if you have enough grain to last until March. You are calculating the odds of the sow surviving her litter. You are worrying. The watch is the hour of anxiety. The darkness acts as a magnifying glass for your fears. A leaking roof becomes a flood. A cough becomes the plague. A missing chicken becomes a famine. Your stomach growls, a loud, cavernous sound in the quiet. You are hungry. You are always hungry. The digestion of the first sleep has emptied you out. You might reach for a crust of bread left on the table, gnawing on it in the dark. It is dry, hard, and cold, but it gives your jaw something to do. You eat like a rat, furtive and quick, hoping not to wake the others who would surely want a bite. The cold eventually drives you back to the bed. You cannot stay out here. You are losing heat too fast. You crawl back into the heap of bodies, your skin like ice. Your wife grumbles in her sleep as your freezing feet touch her calf, but she doesn't wake. You borrow her warmth, stealing it like a thief. You settle back into the groove in the straw, but sleep does not come immediately. You are wide awake now, your mind racing, your body shivering. You lie there, you remain in the bed, but the comfort of the straw has vanished. You are now fully engaged in a staring contest with the void, and the void is winning. The darkness in a medieval peasant's hut is not simply the absence of light. It is a heavy, suffocating substance that seems to displace the air in the room. It presses against your eyeballs, a thick velvet blindfold that you cannot remove. You wave your hand in front of your face, inches from your nose. You feel the wind of the movement, but you see nothing. It is a terrifying dissociation. Your proprioception tells you your hand is there, but your eyes tell you that you no longer exist. This sensory deprivation is a dangerous thing. The human brain is a pattern-seeking engine. It craves input. When you starve it of visual data, it begins to manufacture its own. You are experiencing what modern psychologists might call the prisoner's cinema, though for you, it is simply the nightly torment of the door veil. First come the phosphene's swirling clouds of blue and gray light that dance across your vision like ghostly nebulas. They pulse and shift, forming geometric patterns that have no business existing in a mud hut. Then the shapes begin to coalesce. The pile of sacks in the corner, which you know contained grain when the sun went down, begins to elongate. In the absolute black, it stretches upward, sprouting limbs, transforming into a stooped figure watching you from the shadows. You know it is just a sack. You tell yourself it is just a sack. But the darkness whispers that perhaps the sack was just a disguise the demon wore during the day. You squeeze your eyes shut, but the figure remains burned onto your retina. This is the playground of the medieval imagination. You live in a world where the supernatural is not a distant theory, but a physical neighbor. The priest tells you on Sundays that the air is thick with invisible spirits, warring angels, and prowling devils. At noon, standing in the bright field, these stories feel like metaphors. Here, in the pitch black of 3 a.m., they feel like news reports. You listen. The auditory hallucinations follow the visual ones. The wind whistling through a crack in the wattle sounds remarkably like a name being whispered. Your name. The scratching of a mouse in the thatch becomes the fingernails of a revenant trying to claw its way in. Even the rhythmic chewing of the ox takes on a sinister cadence, sounding less like a cow and more like something grinding bones. You hold your breath, straining to separate the mundane from the malevolent. It is exhausting work, being the security guard for a dimension you cannot see. Historians still argue whether the high rate of reported supernatural encounters in the Middle Ages was due to ergot poisoning in the bread or simply the result of spending 12 hours a day in sensory isolation. Lying there, heart thudding against your ribs, you suspect the latter. You don't need hallucinogenic mold to see monsters. You just need a total lack of photons and a healthy fear of hell. Then comes the physical sensation. You feel a heaviness on your chest. It starts as a pressure, like a cat settling down to sleep, but it grows. It becomes a crushing weight, pinning you to the mattress. You try to inhale, but your lungs feel paralyzed. You try to scream, but your throat is frozen. This is the Mara, the night hag. In centuries to come, science will call this sleep paralysis, a mismatch between your waking mind and your sleeping body. But you don't have science. You have folklore. And folklore says a demon is currently sitting on your ribcage, stealing your breath. You lie there, trapped in your own body, staring blindly into the dark while the invisible weight crushes you. It is a moment of pure, distilled terror. You recite the Lord's Prayer in your head, the words tumbling over each other in a frantic mental scramble. Pater Noster, quies in caelis. The weight lifts as suddenly as it arrived. You gasp, sucking in a lungful of cold air, your body drenched in a sudden, cold sweat. The demon has lost interest, or perhaps the prayer worked, or perhaps your brain simply reconnected to your diaphragm. You will never know for sure, and that uncertainty will keep you awake for another hour. There is a bleak humor in your situation. You are terrified of specters and ghouls, yet the thing most likely to kill you in this room is a microscopic flea carrying a bacteria from a rat. You are worried about the devil stealing your soul, while the Lord is stealing your grain and the frost is stealing your toes. You are pointing your fear in the wrong direction, but ghosts are much more interesting to worry about than malnutrition. The darkness also distorts your sense of space. The room feels simultaneously infinite and coffin-sized. Without walls to fix your perspective, you feel untethered, as if the bed is floating in a void. But if you reach out, your knuckles graze the rough wood of the wall, reminding you that you are actually trapped in a box. It is a paradox of claustrophobia and agoraphobia, experienced simultaneously. You try to focus on the mundane to anchor yourself. You run through a mental inventory of the hut. The table is to the left. The hearth is to the right. The door is straight ahead. You build a wireframe model of your reality in your mind, trying to impose order on the chaos. But the darkness keeps shifting the furniture. You could swear the table has moved closer. You could swear the door is standing open, just a crack. You don't dare get up to check. If you get up and the door is open, you have to deal with whatever opened it. If you stay in bed, you can pretend it's closed. Ignorance, in this case, is not bliss. It is a survival strategy. Your eyes begin to water from the strain of not blinking. You are staring so hard into the blackness that your vision begins to gray out, the darkness turning into a static-filled fuzz. This is the gray fog, the threshold of madness. You wonder if this is what the blind see. You wonder if this is what death looks like, conscious, but erased. The ox shifts again, bumping against the wooden partition. The sound is loud, clumsy, and wonderfully biological. It breaks the spell. Demons do not bump into furniture. They pass through it. The clumsiness of the animal reassures you. You reach out a hand, blindly, and your fingers brush the rough, warm flank of the beast. It twitches, but doesn't move away. That contact is your lifeline. It connects you back to the physical world, to the smell of manure and hay, to the reality of the farm. You pull your hand back, wrapping it in the blanket. The hallucinations recede, retreating back into the corners of the room. The sack becomes a sack again. The whisper becomes the wind. You are still blown. The terror of the Mara fades, leaving you with a racing heart and a cold sweat. But as your breathing steadies, you become aware of a subtle shift in the bed. The rhythm of the breathing beside you has changed. The soft, whistling snore of your wife has stopped, replaced by a quiet, conscious stillness. She is awake. You are both awake. And in the crushing darkness of the peasant hut, this synchronization is a rare and precious key that unlocks the only true privacy you will ever know. You turn your head on the straw bolster. You cannot see her face. It is far too dark for that. But you can feel the warmth radiating from her shoulder. You reach out a hand under the rough wool blanket and find her fingers. They are rough, calloused, and cold, just like yours. She squeezes back. In this moment, the watch transforms from a time of solitary dread into a time of stolen intimacy. This is the hour of the wolf, but it is also the hour of the husband and wife. During the day, your life is a public performance. You are watched by the bailiff in the fields, judged by the priest in the church, and monitored by your neighbors in the village square. Even in your own home, the door is often open to let in light, meaning anyone walking past can see what you are eating for dinner. You are never truly alone. Your words are guarded, your complaints swallowed, your affection performed or withheld based on who might be looking. But here, in the pitch black of 3 a.m., the audience is asleep. The Lord is in his castle, the priest is in his rectory, and the sun is on the other side of the world. For the next hour, you are not a serf. You are a person. You begin to whisper. It is a soft, barely there sound, a breath voice designed not to wake the children who are sleeping inches away. You talk about the things that are too dangerous to say in the daylight. You complain about the steward's unfair measurements of the grain. You worry about the spot of rot on the sheep's hoof. You gossip about the miller's daughter. It is a mundane, gritty conversation, but the freedom to say it aloud without looking over your shoulder is intoxicating. Historians still argue whether these midnight hours were the true birthplace of Peasant. Revolts, the only time when the oppressed could plan their resistance without fear of the gallows. Lying there, whispering treason about the tax collector, you can believe it. This is also the time for the marital debt. This is the church's term, not yours, though you feel the weight of the obligation. The church teaches that marriage is a contract, and sex is the payment owed by one spouse to the other to prevent the sin of lust from spilling out elsewhere. It is a grim, transactional view of intimacy, but you don't dwell on the theology. You dwell on the logistics. Making love in a medieval peasant bed is a high-stakes tactical operation. You are surrounded by obstacles. On one side, you have your children, ranging from infants to teenagers, all packed into the same straw mattress. You must be silent. You must be still. The friction of the straw is loud. The groaning of the bed frame is louder. You move with the slow, deliberate caution of a thief cracking a safe. You could go outside, perhaps to the barn, but hypothermia is a remarkably effective contraceptive. So you stay in the warmth, navigating the hazards of elbows and knees. The church, in its infinite wisdom, has very specific opinions on how you should go about this. The priest, who technically has zero field experience in these matters, has explained that the missionary position is the only natural and godly way. Any other geometry is considered a sin against nature, punishable by penance or worse. You are also forbidden from intimacy on Sundays, feast days, fast days, during Advent, during Lent, and while your wife is unclean. If you actually followed all the rules, the human race would have died out in the 12th century. But here, in the dark, the priest isn't watching. You do what you can, as quietly as you can, stealing a moment of pleasure from a life that offers very little of it. There is a bleak humor in the attempt. You are trying to be romantic while smelling of ox manure, freezing your backside, and terrified that your 3-year-old is going to wake up and ask for water. It is not the sweeping romance of the troubadours. It is functional, hurried, and quiet. It is the friction of survival. You are trying to make a new field hand, provided this one survives the pox, the famine, and the first 5 years of life. The presence of the children adds a layer of psychological complexity. You think they are asleep. You hope they are asleep. But you remember being a child in this same bed, listening to your own parents in the dark, lying rigid and pretending to be a sack of grain. The little pitchers have big ears, as the saying goes. The darkness makes their hearing acute. You pause every time the straw rustles, holding your breath, waiting for the sleepy voice of a child to shatter the mood. It is a distinct mood killer to realize your audience might be awake and taking notes. And then there are the animals. The ox doesn't care about your morals, but he is a witness. There is something unsettling about the large, glassy eyes of a cow reflecting the faint ember glow of the hearth, watching you from 5 feet away. The animals are part of the family, yes, but there are boundaries you wish existed. A goat sneezing at a critical moment serves as a humble reminder that you are not far removed from the beasts yourself. Sometimes the watch is not used for sex or treason, but for simple comfort. You might just hold each other. In a world where physical touch is often violent, a slap from a parent, a shove from a bailiff, a kick from a horse, gentleness is a luxury. You run your hand over your wife's hair, feeling the grease and the rough linen of her coif. She rests her head on your chest. You are two warm stones in a cold river. You draw strength from this contact. It is a silent affirmation that you are in this together, two small specks of life fighting against the winter. You discuss the future. This is the time for planning. If the pig farrows well, you whisper, we can trade 2 piglets for a new iron plowshare. If the harvest is good, she replies, we can buy a length of red ribbon for the girl. These are small dreams, pathetic by the standards of the castle on the hill, but they are yours. You build castles in the air during the watch, constructing a future where you are slightly less hungry, slightly less cold. The darkness allows you to imagine a reality that the harsh light of day would instantly destroy. But the window is closing. You can feel the temperature dropping further as the night deepens toward morning. The burst of wakeful energy is fading, replaced by the heavy, leaden pull of the second sleep. The intimacy must end. You pull away, rearranging the blankets, checking that the children are covered. The transition back to being the intimacy of the whispered conversation fades as your wife's breathing deepens, slowing back into the heavy, rhythmic cadence of sleep. You are alone again. The brief connection you shared, that small, warm island of humanity in the sea of the night, has been swallowed by the tide. You are the last sentry left awake in the cottage, and as the silence reclaims the room, the darkness seems to press in closer, heavier than before. You pull the blanket up to your chin, but it is not enough. There is a draft. It is not a wind. It is something more subtle and insidious. It is a thin, razor-sharp current of freezing air that has found the one weakness in your home, defenses, a crack in the wattle, a gap in the thatch, or perhaps a warp in the doorframe. It snakes across the room, ignoring the fire, ignoring the animals, and finds the exposed skin of your neck. It feels like a cold, wet finger tracing your spine. In the modern world, a draft is a nuisance, a reason to call a contractor. Here, in the deep watch of the night, a draft is a threat. It carries the bad air, the invisible miasma that the physicians say causes ague and fevers. But deep down, in the reptilian part of your brain that remembers the old stories, you fear it carries something else. You begin to pray. It is not the soaring, melodic chant of the monks in the abbey miles away. You have heard them once, their voices rising in perfect harmony to greet the dawn. Your prayer is nothing like that. It is a low, frantic mumble, a mechanical repetition of words you barely understand. Pater Noster, qui es in celis. You recite the Latin syllables like a magic spell, using them not to praise God, but to build a shield. You are walling yourself in with holy words, brick by linguistic brick, trying to keep the draft and whatever rides upon it at bay. The night, you have been taught, belongs to the enemy. God is the sun, the light, the truth. When the sun goes down, his gaze is averted. The world is handed over to the Prince of Darkness. The silence of the cottage is not empty. It is pregnant with invisible activity. The church tells you that legions of demons prowl the earth between midnight and cockcrow, looking for souls that are unguarded. They are not the red-skinned, horned caricatures of later cartoons. They are subtle spirits of despair, sickness, and temptation. They are the shadows in the corner that seem to detach themselves from the wall. They are the sudden chill that wakes a baby. You pray because you are terrified or improvise a sudden death. To die in your bed is not a tragedy. It is an inevitability. But to die in your sleep, without the chance to confess your sins, without the last rites, that is the ultimate catastrophe. That is a one-way ticket to the fires of hell, or at best, a few thousand years in purgatory. You run through a mental checklist of your soul's inventory. You stole an egg from the neighbor's coop last week. You looked at the miller's wife with lust. You curse the bailiff under your breath. These are small sins, but in the dark, they feel heavy. They are anchors that could drag you down if your heart were to stop beating in the next hour. So you bargain. You whisper promises to the thatch above you. Lord, if I wake, I will tithe an extra measure of grain. Lord, keep the fever from the house, and I will say 10 aves. You are a merchant of the soul, haggling with the Almighty in the dark. It is a desperate, pathetic commerce. You know rationally that God probably doesn't need your grain, but you need to feel like you have some leverage in a universe that seems indifferent to whether you freeze or starve. As you mutter, your hand creeps out from under the blanket to touch the wood of the bed frame. Embedded in the post is a small, rusty iron nail. You rub your thumb against the rough metal. The priest would scold you for this. He calls it superstition. But the priest sleeps in a stone rectory with a thick door. You sleep in a mud hut. You know the old rules, the ones that predate the cross. Iron wards off the good folk, the fairies, the spirits of the woods who steal children and sour milk. You are hedging your bets. You pray to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, but you hold on to the iron nail, just in case. You look toward the door. Above the lintel, hidden in the shadows, hangs a witch stone, a pebble with a natural hole worn through it by water. You found it in the stream and hung it there to prevent hags from riding your horses in the night. You wonder if it's working. The horses are quiet in the barn, but you can never be sure. The boundary between religion and magic is blurry here in the dark. You use whatever weapons you have. A prayer, a stone, a nail. You are building a fortress out of garbage and hope. The silence is loud. It hums in your ears, a high-pitched frequency of nothingness. Every sound is amplified. A timber settles with a loud crack, and your heart stops. Was that a footstep? Is it a thief? Thieves are real enough. Desperate men roam the countryside, and your door is barred only by a piece of wood. But you fear the thief less than the other things. A thief you can fight with a pitchfork. You cannot fight a demon with farm tools. You listen to the wind howling around the eaves. It sounds like voices. The wild hunt, perhaps. The ghostly procession of the damned, riding through the sky to collect souls. You pull the blanket over your head again. If you can't see them, maybe they can't see you. It is the logic of a child, but you are all children in the face of the night. The draft finds you again. It chills your ear. You shiver, your teeth chattering lightly. You resume the prayer, faster this time. Ave Maria, gratia plena. You treat the prayer like a physical source of heat. If you say it fast enough, if you mean it hard enough, maybe it will warm the room. Maybe it will plug the hole in the wall. You think of the monks in the monastery. Right now they are awake too. They are filing into the cold stone sanctuary for matins, the night office. They are chanting the psalms, their voices blending with the light of beeswax candles. They are the professional soldiers in this war against the dark. You are just a civilian conscript holding the line with a rusty knife. You hope their prayers are strong enough to cover you, because yours feel weak and thin, dissolving into the cold air before they reach the rafters. There is a deep, existential loneliness to this vigil. You realize that no matter how close your family lies, you are dying alone every night. Sleep is a rehearsal for the grave, and the watch is the moment you wake up in the coffin to check if the lid is still nailed down. You are aware of your own mortality in a way that the daylight obscures. In the sun, you are strong. You are a worker. In the dark, you are meat. You are frail, soft, and easily broken. Your stomach rumbles, breaking the spiritual tension with a biological reality. You are hungry again. The fear consumes calories. You wonder if there is any pottage left in the pot by the fire, but you dare not get up to check. To leave the bed now would be to step into the territory of the draft. You stay put, your hunger another penance to offer up. The prayer eventually becomes a rhythm, a lullaby without a melody. You lose track of the words. You are just making sounds now, a low, buzzing hum that vibrates in your chest. It is comforting. It is the sound of your own life continuing. You are proving to the darkness that you are still here, still breathing, still resisting. The ox exhales a long, loud breath, a sound of pure, unconcerned contentment. He does not pray. He does not fear the draft. He simply exists. You envy him. He has no soul to lose, no demons to fight. He just has hay and sleep. You reach out and touch the wall again, feeling the damp earth. You are trapped between the mud of the wall and the mud of the floor, suspending yourself with words. Slowly, the terror begins to recede. Not because the danger has passed, but because your brain is tiring. The adrenaline of the waking shock is fading, replaced by the crushing weight of the day's labor. The second sleep, the prayer fades from your lips, but the anxiety does not. A sound scratches at the edge of your hearing, a scuffling, dragging noise from the far corner of the room where the grain sack sits. It is likely a rat. Rats are your roommates, uninvited tenants who pay no rent and eat your winter supply of barley. But in the pitch black of the door veil, your mind whispers that it might be something else. A goblin? A thief? A wolf that has somehow chewed through the oak door? You cannot endure the not knowing. The darkness has transformed from a passive blanket into an active threat. You need to see. You sit up slowly, the straw mattress groaning in protest. You reach out into the void, your hand trembling slightly from the cold, fumbling for the small niche in the wall where you keep your technology of light. Your fingers brush against cold iron and rough stone. You find the tinderbox. You are about to perform an act that is simultaneously mundane and terrifyingly dangerous. You are going to bring fire into a house built entirely out of fuel. Your home is a masterclass in flammability. The floor is covered in dried, rushes-old, brittle reeds that catch fire faster than gunpowder. The walls are wattle and daub, a mixture of mud and straw that dries into a substance with the structural integrity of a biscuit and the fire resistance of paper. And above you, the roof is thatched thick layers of dried rye straw, tightly packed, looming over your head like a massive, inverted campfire waiting to happen. You are essentially living inside a well-ventilated pile of kindling. You pull out the flint and the C-shaped steel striker. You hold a piece of charcloth linen burned black to catch a spark between your thumb and the flint. You strike. Clack. Nothing. The steel is cold. Your hands are stiff. Clack. A tiny shower of orange sparks dies in the air before hitting the cloth. You curse silently. This is the struggle of the medieval night. Even the simple act of making light requires a level of dexterity you currently lack. Finally, a spark catches. A tiny, glowing red eye opens on the black fabric. You blow on it gently, feeding it oxygen until it spreads. You touch a spill, a thin splinter of wood to the glow, and a small yellow flame bursts into life. Now you must transfer this flame to the rushlight. You do not have candles. Candles are made of beeswax, and beeswax is expensive enough that burning it feels like lighting a torch with a banknote. Instead, you have a rushlight. It is the humblest, saddest form of illumination known to man. It is a strip of the soft pith from a rush plant, peeled, dried, and dragged through a pot of melted mutton fat, usually the rancid leftovers that were too gross to eat. You light the end. It sputters, hissing as the moisture in the fat boils off. It does not produce a steady, golden glow. It produces a smoky, wavering light that smells aggressively of old sheep. It is a light source that smells like a breakfast that gave up. You hold the iron holder, the neep, aloft. The shadows in the room leap back, but they don't go far. The light is feeble, extending perhaps 3 feet. Beyond that, the darkness is thicker than before. But within that circle of dim yellow light, you see the reality of your home. The dust motes dancing in the air, the soot staining the rafters, the glassy eye of the ox blinking at the sudden brightness. But you are not looking at the ox. You are looking at the flame. You are acutely aware that you are holding a naked fire in your hand, and your hand is shaking. One drop, that is all it would take. One drop of burning, liquid fat falling from the rushlight onto the dry rushes of the floor. The fire would spread faster than you could stomp it out. In seconds, the floor would be a sheet of flame. In a minute, the wall hangings, if you have any, would catch. In 2 minutes, the thatch would ignite. Once the thatch goes, the game is over. A thatched roof burns with a ferocity that is almost sentient. It creates its own updraft, sucking the air out of the room, turning your home into a blast furnace. You remember the village laws. The couvre-feu, the cover fire. The origin of the word curfew is not just a rule to make sure you go to bed. It is a public safety ordinance. The church bell rings at 8 o'clock, signaling that all fires must be damped down, covered with an iron lid or ash to prevent exactly this scenario. To be caught with an open flame after curfew is a crime. You are breaking the law right now, standing here in your nightshirt, risking the entire village for the sake of spotting a rat. Historians still argue about the frequency of medieval fires, but the layout of the villages tells the story. Houses are packed together, eaves almost touching. If your house burns, the neighbor's house burns. If the wind is blowing, the whole town burns. You are holding the potential for mass homelessness in your frozen fingers. You take a step toward the corner. The rushlight wavers, casting wild, lurching shadows that look like dancing demons on the walls. A blob of hot grease rolls down the pith and lands on your thumb. You hiss in pain, jerking your hand. The rushlight slips from the iron nip. Time seems to slow down. You watch the burning stick tumble through the air, turning end over end. It hits the floor. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then, a single stalk of dried straw curls up, turning black, then glowing orange. A tiny wisp of smoke rises. It is a quiet, delicate beginning to a catastrophe. You do not think, you react. You stomp your bare foot down on the spark. You grind your heel into the dirt floor, twisting it, crushing the oxygen out of the incipient disaster. You lift your foot. The glow is gone. There is only a black smudge on the floor and a stinging burn on your soul. You stand there in the returning darkness, your heart hammering against your ribs like a trapped bird. The rushlight is out. The room is black again. The smell of smoke acrid and sharp hangs in the air, mixing with the smell of the sheep fat. You are trembling not from cold, but from adrenaline. You almost did it. You almost destroyed your world. And for what? To see a rat? The rat is still there, by the way. You hear it scuttle away, unbothered by the drama. It has won. You realize the arrogance of trying to conquer the night. The night is safer than the light. In the dark, you might stub your toe or imagine a ghost. But with the light comes the fire, and the fire has no mercy. You feel a sudden intense gratitude for the damp, cold, suffocating blackness. It is a blanket that smothers the sparks. You fumble your way back to the bed, moving with a new caution. You have learned your lesson. You will not light the rushlight again. You will sit in the dark. You will let the rats eat the grain. You will let the goblins dance in the corners. Because the alternative is standing in the snow, watching everything you own turn into ash and floating up to the uncaring stars. You crawl back under the wool covers, your burnt foot throbbing in time with your pulse. Your wife shifts, mumbling something unintelligible. You freeze, hoping she doesn't smell the smoke on you. She would be furious, and rightly so. You have endangered the family for a moment of comfort. You lie on your back, staring up at the invisible thatch. You can still see the afterimage of the flame in your eyes, a bright, jagged scar on your vision. It is a reminder. You are a creature of the sun. When the sun goes, your dominion ends. To try and steal back the sight from the night is to invite the destroyer into your home. You wrap the blanket, you lie back in the straw, your burnt foot throbbing a dull, rhythmic cadence against the sheets, and wait for your heart to stop trying to escape your chest. The adrenaline of the near fire is fading, leaving you in a state of hyper-alert exhaustion. Your eyes are useless in the returned darkness, so your body compensates by diverting all available energy to your ears. You become a listening post, and what you hear, now that the rush of your own blood has quieted, is the realization that silence is a myth. The village is breathing. You are separated from your neighbors, not by stone or brick, but by wattle and daub, a woven lattice of hazel sticks, plastered with a mixture of mud, straw, and animal dung. It is a remarkable building material that tries hard enough to stop the wind, but remains porous enough to let every single secret pass through it like water through a sieve. Your wall is essentially a membrane. It vibrates. To your left, through a wall that is perhaps 6 inches thick, you hear the widow Agnes. She is old, older than anyone has a right to be, perhaps 50, and her lungs are failing. You listen to her cough. It is not a dry throat clearing. It is a wet, rattling sound that seems to bubble up from the bottom of a well. You know this cough. You have heard it in your own family. It is the sound of the winter fever, the slow fluid accumulation that eventually drowns a person in their own chest. You lie there, analyzing the timbre of the cough like a physician. Is it worse than yesterday? Yes. Will she see the spring? Probably not. You don't feel sad, exactly. You feel a pragmatic resignation. Her cough is just the background noise of the season, a grim metronome ticking down the time for all of you. To your right, the house is shared by the miller's brother. He is a man of foul temper, especially when the ale runs dry. You hear the low, grumbling murmur of his voice, followed by the sharp, pleading tone of his wife. You cannot make out every word, but the cadence of the argument is universal. It is the sound of scarcity. They are fighting about food or money or the lack thereof. You hear a thud of fist hitting a table, or perhaps a wall, and then silence. You flinch. The violence of the neighbors is your violence. There is no such thing as domestic privacy. If a man beats his wife in a medieval village, the entire street participates as an audience. You lie there, holding your breath, waiting for a screen that will force you to decide whether to intervene or to pretend you are asleep. Most often, you choose sleep. Intervention is messy, and you have to look these people in the eye at the village pump tomorrow. It is a cowardice born of proximity. You rationalize it by telling yourself that they can hear you too. They hear your arguments, your discipline of the children, your intimate failures. You are all mutually held hostage by the... You are still awake, but you have moved past the lucid terror of the near fire and the social anxiety of the listening village. You have entered a murkier, swampier state of consciousness, a twilight zone where the boundary between your physical body and your superstitious mind begins to dissolve. The culprit, however, is not a demon from the pit of hell. It is the bowl of pottage you ate 6 hours ago. Your stomach gives a violent, wet lurch. It is a sensation like a fist clenching inside your abdomen, followed by a slow, rolling boil. In the modern world, you would reach for an antacid and blame the spicy takeout. Here, you lie frozen in the straw, convinced that the knot in your gut is a spiritual affliction. You are suffering from the defining ailment of the medieval peasantry, a digestion that is essentially a biological war zone. Consider what you ate. Your diet is almost entirely comprised of coarse bread and pottage, a thick brown slurry of peas, beans, onions, and whatever cabbage hadn't rotted in the garden. It is fuel, yes, but it is heavy, fibrous fuel. It sits in your stomach like a ball of wet clay. And now, in the stillness of the watch, that clay is fermenting. Medieval physicians have a name for this. They talk of gross vapors. The theory is that the heat of digestion boils the food in your stomach, releasing fumes that rise up the spine and cloud the brain, creating visions, nightmares, and melancholy. Lying there, gripping your belly, you believe them. You can feel the vapors rising. You feel lightheaded, slightly nauseous, and deeply, irrationally afraid. The darkness of the room acts as a canvas for these vapors. Your eyes, starved of light, begin to conspire with your unhappy gut. You stare at the foot of the bed. There is a shape there. It is dark, huddled, and unmoving. It is the pile of laundry your wife left on the chest. You know this. You saw her put it there. It is just your wool tunic and a few linen shifts waiting to be mended. But as another cramp seizes your intestines, the shape changes. The sleeve of the tunic elongates. It looks like an arm, a long, withered arm reaching out toward you. The lump of the chest becomes a crouching torso. It is no longer laundry. It is a goblin. It is a brownie or a hob, one of the house spirits that usually helps with the chores, but turns malicious if offended. Did you leave it a bowl of cream? No. You drank the cream yourself. This is its revenge. You squeeze your eyes shut, trying to reset your vision. You tell yourself it is just wool. Just wool. Just wool. You open your eyes. The goblin is still there, but now it seems to be swaying slightly. Is it the draft moving the cloth, or is it breathing? This pareidolia, the tendency to see faces and threats in random patterns, is turbocharged by your physical discomfort. Pain makes you paranoid. The gas trapped in your colon feels like a physical intruder, a shot sent by an elf. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of demons in medieval art was a result of genuine religious fervor or simply a side effect of a population that was perpetually hallucinating from moldy rye bread and severe constipation. You are living proof of the latter theory. You shift your weight, trying to ease the pressure in your side. The straw mattress rustles, sounding like dry bones grinding together. The sound startles you. The goblin in the corner seems to flinch. You freeze. It is a standoff between a flatulent peasant and a pile of dirty shirts. The fear is visceral. You are not worried about being eaten. You are worried about being possessed. The church teaches that demons can enter the body through the orifices. A yawn, a sneeze, or yes, the other end, are all portals. Your indigestion feels like a knocking at the back door. You clench your muscles, terrified that if you relax, you will let the devil in. It gives a whole new theological weight to the phrase holding it in. You look toward the hearth. The embers cast a faint, dying red glow on the iron pothook hanging from the chimney. It looks like a gallows. You see a small, swinging figure hanging from it. It is just a shadow, a trick of the light and the soot. But your mind immediately jumps to the criminal hanged at the crossroads last week. Is he here? Has he come for warmth? You can almost smell the rot of the gibbet, though it is likely just the smell of the old cabbage in the pot below. The hallucinations are not always visual. The vapors affect your hearing too. The blood rushing in your ears sounds like whispering, sibilant, hissing voices. They are murmuring your secrets. They know about the grain you hid. They know about the lust you felt. The guilt of your daily life manifests as an auditory hallucination. You cover your ears with the blanket, but the voices are inside your head, riding the fumes of the beans. There is a tragedy to this fear. You are a rational man in the daylight. You can build a fence, slaughter a pig, and negotiate a harvest contract. But the night reduces you to a child. You are at the mercy of your own biology. The lack of understanding of your own body turns every ache into an omen. A sharp pain in the chest isn't heartburn. It's a witch pinching your heart. A headache isn't dehydration. It's a curse. You live in a world where nothing is just biological. Everything is significant, and everything is out to get you. You try to burp, hoping to release some of the pressure. It is a quiet, suppressed sound. The relief is instantaneous, but fleeting. For a second, the goblin looks like laundry again. The gallows looks like a hook. The world snaps back into focus. But then the pressure builds again, and the monsters return. It is a cycle of misery. You are trapped in a feedback loop between your gut and your eyes. You think about the rich. The lord in the castle eats meat, spices, and white bread. He drinks wine that isn't watered down. Does he see goblins? Or does his digestion grant him visions of angels? You suspect that the quality of your hallucinations is directly tied to your tax bracket. You are hallucinating in peasant vision, muddy, dark, and smelling of boiled onions. A rat scurries across the floor, knocking over a wooden spoon. The sound is explosive in the quiet. The laundry goblin doesn't move. This is the reality check you needed. If it were a real demon, the rat would be dead, or the demon would have eaten the rat. The fact that the vermin are going about their business suggests that the supernatural threat level is low. You exhale a long, shaky breath. The panic begins to subside, replaced by a dull, throbbing weariness. The watch is ending. The vapors are settling. The adrenaline that spiked when you saw the laundry monster is fading, leaving you drained. You look at the corner one last time. It is definitely just a tunic. You feel foolish. You are a grown man, staring at your own pants in terror. But you don't look away completely. You keep one eye cracked open, watching the shape, just in case. Because in the medieval night, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean the laundry isn't out to get you. Your stomach gives one final grumbling protest, the sound of a retreating army. You pull the scratchy wool up to your nose. You have survived the battle of the beans. You are ready to drift again, to let the indigestion become someone else's problem specifically, the problem of the you that has to wake up in 2 hours. But for now, the watch is over. You can feel the change in the air, a subtle shift in the density of the silence. The demons have retreated back into the woodwork. The indigestion has settled into a dull, manageable ache, and the burst of anxious energy that woke you has burned itself out, leaving you hollow. You are left with the cold reality of the hour. You are a man sitting in the dark, freezing, with nothing left to do but try to die for another 3 hours. Returning to sleep now is not a relief. It is a chore. The first sleep was a necessity, a physical collapse. This second sleep, the second sum, is a discipline. You have to force yourself back under. You have to convince your body, which has just spent an hour shivering and worrying, that it is safe to lower its defenses again. You lie back down, and the immediate sensation is one of betrayal. The warm hollow you carved out of the straw 4 hours ago is gone. The heat has dissipated, stolen by the draft you prayed against. The mattress is cold, the blanket is cold. Even the family pile seems to have cooled, their collective furnace banked low for the final stretch of the night. You are not climbing back into a bed. You are climbing back into a damp grave. You curl up, adopting the winter knot, position knees to chest, chin to knees, arms wrapped around shins. You are trying to minimize your surface area, to become a sphere of self-containment. You shiver violently for the first minute, your teeth clicking together in a rhythm that vibrates through your skull. You wait for your own metabolic fire to reheat the wool. It is a slow, painful process. You are using your own calories to heat the bedding, a caloric expenditure you can barely afford. This second sleep is different in texture from the first. The first was a black void, a leaden weight. This one is gray. It is lighter, thinner, and more fragile. You do not fall into it. You drift into it, like a boat losing its mooring in a fog. You are half aware of the room, even as you dream. You can hear the wind. You can feel the itch of the lice. You are straddling the line between the waking world and the dream world, and the membrane between them is porous. The dreams of the second sleep are legendary. The physicians and the priests agree. Morning dreams are distinct. The dreams of the first sleep are dismissed as the fumes of the stomach, which, given your recent battle with the pottage, is accurate. But the dreams of the second sleep, occurring after the digestion is complete and the mind is clear, are considered true. They are somnium prophetic visions sent by God or the angels. You close your eyes and wait for a prophecy. What you get instead is a confused, feverish montage of your daily anxieties. You dream you are plowing a field that never ends, but the ox is actually the village priest, and he is lecturing you about tithes while you whip him. You dream that the grain in the barn has turned into sand. You dream of a feast where the table is groaning with roast meats, but every time you reach for a chicken leg, it turns into a turnip. These are not the grand visions of the saints. These are the stress dreams of a peasant. If this is God speaking to you, he is telling you that you are hungry and worried about your job. It's not exactly the book of Revelation. The quality of this sleep is restless. You toss and turn, fighting the lumps in the mattress. The straw has compressed over the months, becoming a hard, uneven topography of knots and stalks. Medieval mattresses are essentially bags of yard waste that you are expected to find comfort on. You find a sharp end of a stalk poking through the linen sheet, digging into your ribs. You shift, and it digs into your hip. You accept that comfort is not an option. You are merely choosing where you want to be stabbed. A cold is the antagonist that never sleeps. It seeps through the layers of wool, finding the gaps. Your nose is freezing. Your feet are blocks of ice. You try to borrow warmth from your wife again, pressing your cold soles against her legs. She kicks out in her sleep, a reflex action of survival. She is guarding her heat like a dragon guarding gold. You retreat, chastised, and tuck your feet into the hem of your own shift. Drifting deeper, you enter the gray fog. It is a state of suspension where time loses its meaning. You might sleep for 10 minutes or 2 hours. You cannot tell. You float in a haze of half-formed thoughts. You worry about the roof. Did I patch the thatch properly? You worry about the bailiff. Will he demand the extra labor service this week? The thoughts loop, playing over and over like a broken song. This is not rest. This is ruminating with your eyes closed. There is a profound loneliness to the second sleep. During the watch, you felt a connection to the waking world, to your wife, even to the village sounds. Now, everyone has retreated back into their own private skulls. You are alone in the fog. The isolation is palpable. You are a solitary soul drifting in the cold currents of the morning, tethered to the earth only by the heavy, rhythmic breathing of the ox. You hear the rooster crow. It is early, far too early. The rooster is a liar. He crows not because the sun is up, but because he is awake and wants everyone else to be miserable too. You ignore him. You burrow deeper. You know, with a grim certainty, that the true dawn is coming. You can feel the approach of the light, like a looming execution. The second sleep is a stolen pleasure, a frantic attempt to grab a few more moments of oblivion before the bell rings and the wheel of labor begins to turn again. You are fighting a losing battle against the morning. You try to hold on to the fog, to wrap it around you like a cloak. You don't want to wake up. Waking up means cold floors, heavy buckets, and the relentless back-breaking grind of the futile machine. Sleeping means, well, it means being cold and uncomfortable, but at least you don't have to lift anything. The gray fog thickens. The dreams become more vivid, more bizarre. You see your dead grandfather sitting by the hearth, warming his hands. He looks at you and shakes his head, a gesture of infinite pity. You probably wouldn't last long here, he seems to say, echoing a thought you had hours ago. You try to ask him if it's warm in heaven, but your mouth is full of wool. You jolt awake for a second, heart pounding. Was that a noise? No, just the house settling. Just the wood contracting in the deep freeze of the pre-dawn. You sink back down. This is the pattern of the second sleep. Dip, jolt, dip, jolt. It is a jagged line of consciousness. You are skipping across the surface of sleep like a flat stone on a pond, never quite sinking to the bottom. As the final hour approaches, a strange peace settles over you. It is the peace of surrender. You stop fighting the cold. You stop fighting the lumps. You simply accept that this is your lot. You are a body suspended in the gray, waiting for the signal to reanimate. You are not resting. You are recharging, gathering the grim determination you will need to face the sun. The darkness in the room seems to change texture. It is no longer the thick, velvet black of midnight. It is thinning, becoming grainy and charcoal-colored. The true night is ending. The demons have fled. The ghosts have faded. All that is left is the cold. The end of your autonomy arrives not with a whimper, but with a brazen, metallic crash. It is the church bell, ringing out from the tower in the center of the village, slicing through the thin gray light of the pre-dawn like a guillotine blade. It does not invite you to wake up. It commands you. Clang, clang, clang. The sound is physical. It vibrates through the frozen mud, up through the wattle walls, and rattles the very teeth in your head. You jolt from the second sleep, gasping as if you have been pulled underwater. This waking is far worse than the first. The first wakefulness, the door veil, was a natural pause, a biological surfacing. This is an eviction. You are being forcibly ripped from the womb of the blankets and birthed back into a world that wants to break your back. Your body screams in protest. The second sleep has settled deep into your muscles, stiffening the lactic acid from yesterday's labor into a substance resembling concrete. You try to move your legs, and a sharp groan escapes your lips. You feel heavy, leaden, as if gravity has doubled overnight. This is the sleep drunkenness that physicians warn of, a state of confusion and lethargy that makes the simple act of sitting up feel like lifting a boulder. The bell continues to ring. It is relentless. In the medieval world, time is not an abstract concept measured by watches on wrists. It is an acoustic dominance measured by the church and the castle. This is seigneurial time. The night belonged to you, mostly. The darkness was a lawless, unmonitored country where you could whisper, pray, or stare at the ceiling. But the bell marks the return of the Lord's time. From this moment until the sun goes down again, your time belongs to the land, and the land belongs to the man in the stone castle on the hill. You throw off the covers. It is an act of supreme will, comparable to jumping into a frozen lake. The cold air of the morning, the coldest part of the entire 24-hour cycle, pounces on you. It is sharp, aggressive, and utterly merciless. You are instantly shivering, your skin puckering into gooseflesh that feels like sandpaper. The warmth you hoarded all night evaporates in seconds, rising as a pitiful wisp of steam from your nightshirt. You stumble to your feet, your joints popping like dry twigs. The floor is ice cold. You navigate the dark room, which is now filled with the gray, grainy light of false dawn filtering through the cracks. You can see the shapes of your family doing the same zombie shuffle. Your wife is already up, moving toward the hearth with a grim determination. The children are groaning, burrowing deeper into the straw, fighting the inevitable. You do not pity them. You envy them for the 3 seconds of delay they are stealing. You reach the water bucket by the door. You need to wash your face, not for hygiene, but to shock yourself into functionality. You dip the ladle in, and it hits a solid surface with a dull thunk. The water has frozen over. Again, you pick up a heavy wooden spoon or the handle of a knife and smash the ice. Crack. It splinters into sharp shards. You scoop up a handful of water that is barely liquid. It is essentially pain in fluid form, and splash it onto your face. The shock is blinding. It stops your heart for a beat. You gasp, wiping the freezing slurry from your eyes with a rough linen cloth. You are awake. You hate it, but you are awake. Historians still argue whether the ringing of the work bell was seen by peasants as a helpful community service or a symbol of oppression. Standing there, dripping freezing water onto your chest, while the bell hammers at your skull, you don't feel particularly served. You feel owned. The bell is the only thing the Lord gives you for free, and frankly, you would prefer he kept it. The morning routine is a frantic, clumsy race against the light. You must dress in the dark. You pull on your hose-separate wool leggings that tie to your belt, hopping on one foot, shivering, trying not to trip over the pig that is now awake and screaming for food. You pull on your tunic, which is stiff with cold and smells of yesterday's sweat. You wrap your feet in clouts, squares of linen, before shoving them into your hard leather boots. Every movement is stiff. You are a marionette with tangled strings. You check the fire. The embers you banked so carefully during the midnight watch have survived. Thank God. Your wife blows on them, feeding them dry twigs. A small flame leaps up, casting a weak, flickering light on the scene. It is not enough to warm the room, but it is enough to warm a pot of water. You will drink something hot, perhaps a weak ale, warmed with a hot poker, or a broth made from the dregs of the pottage. It is not breakfast. It is a jump start for your metabolism. The sounds of the village are different now. During the night, the sounds were isolated: a cough, a cry. Now it is a collective roar. Doors are banging open. Voices are shouting orders. Animals are being driven out. The organism of the village has woken up, and it is grumpy. You hear the neighbor cursing at his donkey. You hear the widow Agnes hacking up the night's accumulation of phlegm. It is the symphony of the morning misery. You walk to the door and lift the heavy wooden bar. The wood is cold and damp. You pull the door open. The light hits you. It is not the golden, warming sun of the paintings. It is a flat, gray, brutal light that reveals the world in all its mud-caked glory. The romance of the night is gone. The shadows that hid the filth are gone. You see the muck in the street. You see the breath of the oxen steaming in the air. You see the bailiff standing at the end of the lane, tally stick in hand, checking off names. The transition is complete. You are no longer a dreamer, a husband, or a prayer in the dark. You are a unit of labor. You are a set of hands designed to hold a plow. The second sleep feels like a distant memory, a hallucination from a different life. The gray fog has been burned away by the cold reality of the feudal economy. You step out into the mud. It sucks at your boots, a hungry, squelching sound. You join the stream of other figures emerging from their huts, all walking with the same hunched shoulders, eyes fixed on the ground. No one speaks much. It is too cold to talk, and besides, there is nothing to say you are tired. I am tired. We are all tired. It is a shared understanding that needs no words. You look back at your cottage for a split second. The door is closing. Your wife is inside, starting her own endless cycle of chores, churning, sweeping, mending, keeping the fire alive. You feel a pang of longing for the dark, for the straw, for the silence. But the bell has stopped ringing. The silence that follows is not peaceful. It is expectant. The world is waiting for you to work. You trudge toward the fields. The rooster crows again, a triumphant, mocking sound. He was right. The sun is up. The night is dead. And as you walk, you can already feel the exhaustion accumulating in your bones, a heavy sediment that will build and build until the sun goes down again, 12 hours from now, and allows you to collapse back into the first sleep. You are on the wheel, and the wheel has just started to turn. As you drag the heavy plow through the half-frozen mud, your breath clouding in the gray dawn, you cast a glance toward the hill that dominates the valley. There, the Lord's Manor, or perhaps the local castle, stands like a stone sentinel against the sky. But while your world is defined by the brutal, binary switch of sun and moon, the world up there is different. You notice that the windows of the great hall are dark now, but you know that only a few hours ago, while you were huddled in your second sleep, that stone box was blazing with a light so bright it defied God's design. The nobility does not live in the same time zone as you. They have purchased their way out of the dark. To understand this theft of the night, you must understand the technology of the flame. Down here in the village, Light is a pitiful, stinking affair. You have your rushlights dipped in rancid mutton fat that smells like a wet dog on fire. You have your hearth, which smokes and sulks. But up there, in the high ceilings of the aristocracy, they burn beeswax. It sounds simple, but the difference is chemical and economic. Beeswax is the gold standard of illumination. It burns cleanly, without the choking black soot that coats your lungs. It produces a flame that is steady, golden, and surprisingly bright. But most importantly, it smells sweet. When 100 beeswax candles are lit in a chandelier, the room smells of warm honey and summer meadows. It is the scent of heaven, brought down to earth for the pleasure of men who have undone a day's work in their lives. But the cost is staggering. A single pound of beeswax candles costs as much as a skilled craftsman earns in a week. A full night of illumination for a banquet burns through the equivalent of a peasant's yearly income. When you look at those glowing windows, you are watching a bonfire of money. They are literally burning your taxes to see their playing cards. This artificial sun allows the rich to declare war on nature. While you are forced into the premier sum by the crushing weight of the dark, the Lord and his court are just getting started. They have invented a new phase of life, the evening. They stay up long past the curfew bell, dining, dancing, and gambling under the steady gaze of the wax. They have colonized the night. Historians still argue whether this shift in sleep patterns among the nobility was a display of decadence or a strategic necessity for political plotting. Standing in your muddy field, you suspect it is simpler. It is the ultimate status symbol. To stay awake when the world tells you to sleep is a power move. To turn the night into day is to claim equality with the sun. Because they stay up late, they do not sleep in 2 shifts. They do not experience the watch. They collapse into bed well after midnight, often drunk on spiced wine, and they sleep through the dawn. While you are breaking the ice in the water bucket, they are deep in a singular, continuous block of slumber. They are the after-supper men, the night owls who missed the morning mass because they were too busy living in a manufactured daylight. There is a health cost to this rebellion, of course. The physicians whisper that the midnight humors are dangerous for the constitution. The rich suffer from gout, from migraines, from a melancholia that seems to thrive in the artificial light. They have pale, waxy skin, untouched by the sun you see too much of. They look like the candles they burn, soft, expensive, and slowly melting. But the luxury of their light is terrifying to behold. You once caught a glimpse of it, perhaps when delivering firewood to the kitchen door. You saw the perch, a massive wooden structure holding dozens of candles lowered from the ceiling on a winch. You saw the snuffers, servants whose entire job is to move silently through the room, trimming the wicks to prevent them from smoking. The rich do not even have to tend their own fire. They have human beings who act as automated distinct systems. In that room, the shadows are banished. In your hut, the shadows are living things that hide demons and dust. In the manor, the light is so pervasive that there is nowhere for a ghost to hide. But this total illumination creates a strange, flat reality. Without shadows, the room looks like a stage set. The people look like actors. The jewels on their fingers sparkle with a violence that hurts the eyes. It is too bright. It is an aggressive, conquering light that declares, I am rich enough to blind myself. This theft of night creates a deep cultural divide. You, the peasant, are a creature of the natural rhythm. You are synchronized with the chickens and the cows. The Lord is synchronized with his wallet. You live in a biphasic world. He lives in a monophasic one. You will never meet in the middle. When you are most awake, he is asleep. When he is most alive, you are in a coma. It is as if you are distinct species, sharing the same geography, but living on different planets. There is a bleak irony in their pursuit of the night. They spend fortunes on candles, on lamp oil imported from the olive groves of the south, on silver reflectors to amplify the glow. They push back the darkness with all their might. And yet, what do they use this stolen time for? They use it to play hazard, a dice game where they lose more money. They use it to gossip. They use it to eat meals they aren't hungry for. They have bought the night, and they are using it to be bored in a more expensive lighting. You look down at your own hands, wrapped in the rough wood of the plow handles. They are gray with cold and dirt. You don't have beeswax. You have the sun, and the sun is free, but it is also a harsh taskmaster. It demands sweat. The candle demands only gold. The wind picks up, cutting through your tunic. You urge the ox forward. Clump, squelch, the work must continue. The Lord is likely just rolling over in his feather bed now, burying his face in a pillow filled with down that costs more than your house. He is missing the dawn. He is missing the frost on the grass, the pale pink light touching the treetops, the honest bite of the morning air. You tell yourself that you are the lucky one. You tell yourself that the natural way is the godly way. You tell yourself that splitting your sleep is what the body wants, what the soul needs. But deep down, as you watch the last star fade above the manor, you know the truth. You are just jealous of the wax. You are jealous of the ability to tell the sun. Not yet. You wonder what it would be like to read a book if you could read at midnight. You wonder what it would be like to see your wife's face clearly after dark, without the wavering shadows of the rushlight turning her into a stranger. You wonder what it would be like to not be afraid of the corner of the room. But such thoughts are dangerous. They breed resentment, and resentment does not plow the field. You lower your head, focusing on the furrow. The bell has rung. The day has begun. The night has been put away in a box, and no amount of wishing will bring it back until the sun gives up the ghost. Let the rich keep their candles and their gout. You have the mud, and the mud, the centuries slide by not in days, but in the hardening of the mud beneath your feet. The soft, treacherous earth of the medieval village has been paved over with cold, unyielding cobblestones. The thatched roof that breathed with the wind has been replaced by slate and brick that traps the soot. The silence of the wolf-haunted woods has been drowned out by a new rhythmic mechanical roar. You are no longer a serf bound to the land. You are a hand bound to the machine. And here, in the shadow of the smokestacks, the ancient two-part rhythm of your sleep is being murdered by a whistle. The change begins with the light. In the village, light was a precious, finite resource. You respected it because it was scarce. But now, the city is threaded with pipes carrying coal gas. It hisses from the street lamps, casting a sickly greenish-yellow glare that creates shadows where none should exist. It invades your tenement room. It pushes the darkness back so far that the night no longer feels like a wall. It feels like a dirty window. This new light does not care about the sun. It does not flicker or die when the wind blows. It burns steady and hot, fueled by the carbon bones of the earth. It allows the factory owners to do something the medieval lord could only dream of. It allows them to cancel the night entirely. You work in a textile mill now. The air is thick with fluff, microscopic cotton fibers that coat your lungs just as the coal dust coats the buildings. The looms do not stop. They are hungry beasts that demand feeding 24 hours a day. The river that turns the wheel, or the steam engine that drives the belts, does not get tired. And because the machine does not sleep, neither can the schedule. The watch is the first casualty of this new efficiency. In the old days, waking up at 2 a.m. was a moment of peace. It was a time to talk, to pray, to be human. But now, if you wake up at 2 a.m., you are terrified. You look at the cheap clock ticking on the mantelpiece, a device that chops your life into seconds, and you panic. You calculate. If I am awake now, I will be exhausted at 6 a.m., and exhaustion in the factory is not like exhaustion in the field. If you fell asleep behind the plow, the ox stopped. If you fall asleep at the loom, the shuttle takes your finger or your scalp. So you learn to suppress the waking. You force yourself to stay under. You treat the first sleep and second sleep not as two friends, but as a broken product that needs to be fused together. The industrial bosses demand a single solid block of unconsciousness. They want you to charge your battery in one continuous session, so you can discharge it in one continuous shift. The segmented sleep of your ancestors is now viewed as inefficient. It is insomnia. It is a medical defect that must be cured with laudanum or sheer willpower. The architecture of your sleep has also changed. You are no longer sleeping in a heap with your family and the livestock. The privacy you lacked in the hut has been replaced by the isolation of the slum. You might share a room with strangers in a boarding house, sleeping in shifts on a bed that never gets cold, because as soon as you roll out, another exhausted body rolls in. It is the hot bedding system. You are renting a depression in a mattress. You don't know the name of the man whose sweat you are sleeping in. You have traded the intimacy of the clan for the anonymity of the sardine can. The soundscape of the night has shifted from the biological to the mechanical. The breathing of the ox is gone, replaced by the distant clanking of shunting trains and the hiss of steam valves. The silence is never absolute. The city hums with a low-frequency vibration that rattles the window pane. Your brain never truly rests. It is constantly filtering out the noise of progress. And then there is the morning. In the village, the rooster or the church bell woke you. They were annoying, yes, but they were local. They were human scale. Now you are woken by the knocker-upper. He is a man with a long bamboo pole who walks the streets in the pre-dawn gloom, tapping on the upper windows to rouse the workers. He is a human alarm clock, paid a penny a week to ensure you don't steal any sleep from your employer. There is a grim absurdity to it. A man who stays up all night just to make sure you don't. But the true tyrant is the factory whistle. It screams across the rooftops at 5:30 a.m. It is a shrill, steam-powered shriek that bypasses your ears and vibrates directly in your teeth. It is not a call to prayer. It is a command to produce. It signals the start of a 14-hour day where you will stand in one spot, doing one motion 10,000 times. Historians still argue exactly when the watch died out completely. But by the late 19th century, the medical manuals stopped talking about first sleep and started talking about maintenance of unbroken rest. The culture shifted. If you told a doctor you woke up at midnight to chat with your wife, he would prescribe you a sedative. The natural rhythm of the human body, honed over thousands of years of evolution, was pathologized. You were broken because you weren't a machine. The artificial light has tricked your pineal gland. It suppresses your melatonin. You stay up later, tired but wired, reading the penny dreadfuls or staring at the gas flame. You push your sleep start time back to 10 o'clock or 11 p.m. This compresses the night. There is no room for the watch anymore. There is only a frantic 6-hour dash to get enough rest before the whistle blows. You have condensed the sprawling, leisurely landscape of medieval sleep into a high-density, high-stress city block. You feel this loss, even if you can't name it. You feel a hollow space in the middle of the night where the magic used to be. You miss the quiet hour. You miss the time when the world stopped and you could just exist. Now, existence is a binary state. You are either working or you are preparing to work. The transition is painful. Your body remembers the old way. Some nights, you still jolt awake at 2 a.m., your heart racing, looking for the fire to bank. But there is no fire. There is only a cast-iron stove that is cold. There is no ox to comfort you. There is only the damp plaster of the tenement wall. You lie there, frustrated, counting the minutes, worrying about being tired. You have turned the watch into a source of stress. You are failing at sleep, just as you fear failing at the factory. You look at your hands. They are no longer covered in soil. They are stained with grease and soot. They shake slightly, a weaver's tremor. You are more productive than your ancestors. You make more cloth in a day than they made in a lifetime. You have cheaper candles, cheaper bread, and a roof that doesn't burn quite as easily. But you have lost the night. You have sold the silence for a paycheck. The gas lamp outside your window flickers, casting a jittery shadow on the peeling wallpaper. It looks like a cage bar. You realize that the Industrial Revolution didn't just enslave your days. And now, here you are. Not in a mud hut, not in a tenement, but in a room that is likely climate-controlled, secure, and softer than any bed a medieval king ever knew. You are lying on memory foam or coil springs, covered by synthetic fibers that mimic the warmth of wool without the itch. You have achieved the pinnacle of human comfort. The draft is gone. The wolves are gone. The flea is extinct in your sanctuary, but the echo remains. You know the feeling. It happens at 3 a.m. You jolt awake, your heart beating a little too fast, your mind instantly alert. The room is silent, save for the hum of the refrigerator or the distant rush of a car on the highway. You are wide awake, and your immediate reaction is not relief or contemplation or prayer. It is panic. You look at the clock, the digital numbers glowing red or green in the dark, and you do the math. If I fall back asleep right now, I can get 3 hours. If I take an hour, I only get 2. You are negotiating with time just as the factory worker did. You feel broken. You tell yourself you have insomnia. You worry that your productivity tomorrow will suffer. You diagnose yourself with a disorder because your body has dared to stop sleeping in the middle of the night. But listen closely to the silence. You are not broken. You are simply ancient. Your body is a biological antique. It was designed in the savannah, honed in the village, and hardened in the fields. It expects the premier sum. It expects to crash hard after sunset, burn through the initial exhaustion, and then wake up to check the fire. It is waiting for the watch. It wants to scan the perimeter for wolves. It wants to whisper to a partner. It wants to process the day in the quiet, meditative safety of the door veil. But you don't give it a fire to check. You don't have a perimeter to scan. And so, that burst of wakeful energy, which was meant for survival and intimacy, has nowhere to go. It turns inward. It curdles into anxiety. The watch becomes the worry. You lie there and replay an awkward conversation from 5 years ago. You stress about an email you didn't send. You worry about the climate, the economy, the future. Your brain is running a security diagnostic on a threat landscape that no longer exists, so it invents new monsters to fight. And then you reach for the weapon that kills the night completely. You reach for the phone. The screen lights up, casting a harsh blue-white pallor on your face. This is your rushlight. This is your candle. But unlike the soft, warm glow of the flame, this light screams at your brain that it is noon. It halts your melatonin production instantly. You begin to scroll. You are looking for connection, just as the peasant listened to the village breathe. But the digital village is too loud. It is a torrent of information, outrage, and noise. You are reading the thoughts of strangers instead of listening to the breathing of your family. You are filling the sacred gap, the magical pause of the night, with the junk food of the internet. You are doom-scrolling through the door veil. Historians and anthropologists call this maintenance insomnia, but a better name might be biological grief. Your body is mourning a rhythm it lost only a few generations ago. It is trying to perform a duet with a sun that you have replaced with a screen. You are a biphasic sleeper living in a monophasic world, and the friction between those two realities is the grit in your eyes. You might try to medicate it. You take pills to force the bridge between the first and second sleep, to knock yourself out so you can achieve the perfect 8 hours that the industrial machine promised you. You view the wakefulness as a failure. You fight it. You toss and turn, frustrated by your own alertness, cursing the very survival mechanism that kept your ancestors alive through the Ice Age. Think about the irony. You have conquered the cold. You have conquered the hunger. You have even conquered the dark. But you cannot conquer the echo. The ghost of the medieval peasant is lying in the bed with you, right now. He is awake, and he wants to know if the ox is okay. He wants to know if the door is barred. He wants to sit by the embers and just be for an hour before the second sleep pulls him under. But there are no embers. There is only the standby light of the television, staring at you like a red, unblinking eye. Perhaps the next time you wake up in the dead of night, you shouldn't fight it. Don't check the phone. Don't look at the clock. Don't calculate the hours. Just lie there. Accept the wakefulness as a gift from the past. This is your watch. This is the only time the modern world will ever leave you alone. The boss isn't emailing you. The bill collectors aren't calling. The social media feed can wait. Feel the sheets against your skin, not rough wool, but soft cotton. Listen to the silence, not the cough of the dying widow, but the quiet safety of your home. Realize that you are safe. The door is locked. The roof will not burn. The wolves are far away. You have achieved everything your ancestors prayed for in their frozen, dark vigils. You have warmth. You have safety. You have a full belly. Your insomnia is not a disease. It is a handshake across the centuries. It is your DNA remembering the rhythm of the earth. You are experiencing the door veil without the danger, the watch without the wolf. It feels wrong only because you have been told that sleep must be a solid, heavy brick. But sleep can be a broken stone, a path with a gap in the middle, and that gap is where the magic used to live. So you lie there in the dark, a modern human with a medieval brain, suspended between two worlds. The street lamp outside casts a shadow on the wall. It doesn't look like a goblin. It just looks like a shadow. You take a breath, deep and slow, filling your lungs with air that isn't smoky, that isn't damp, that isn't carrying the plague. You close your eyes. You let the phone go dark. You stop fighting the echo. You let the gray fog come for you in its own time. You are not failing at sleep. You are just taking the scenic route, the old route, the path worn smooth by a billion footsteps before you. The second sleep will come. It always does. You just have to wait for the watch to end. Now the long night of history is finally over. The village has faded back into the mist. The mud has dried and dusted away. The sound of the church bell has stopped ringing, and the factory whistle has fallen silent. The heavy wooden door is closed, and the rushlight has been blown out. You can let go of the plow now. You can let go of the cold.